So Zach, we've talked about half-baked ideas before.
Yeah, often.
And we just, recorded a podcast on the Old Testament sacrificial systems.
Yeah.
And probably not baked at all as this idea of, reenacting, an animal sacrifice. It just doesn't hit the sensibilities of where we are today in our modern culture.
Yep, that's right.
But, have you ever seen, the CPR dummies that you can do stuff on? Or like when we went to Anderson, we were looking at their nursing lab, and the doctor, they have patients there that, you can take their blood pressure. You can start an IV in, they have all these vital signs.
Yeah.
What if we commissioned
honestly,
a cow, a fake cow, a fake ram?
The Ark Encounter's just dying for this. I'm being serious. Ken Ham, get on this. You owe us royalties. We said it we called dibs. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So you have basically a cow that's not really a cow, but you could show this is what would happen. They're going to slit the neck, and they're going to let the neck artery bleed out. You could have the fluid in there, and then
this is one of your smartest ideas. This is not happening. This is great. And then you could also, in the same thing, it's you have all the priestly garb and people this would be a great experiential thing. You step into it.
I want to see the kidneys with the fat on the kidneys.
Yes.
What do you do with that? You're going to have some dung, and all of that could be built in there.
Wow.
And then you put it back in and take it to another church, and you show them how to do it,
Don't air this. We'll take some seed money. That's a good idea. That's because it's people don't have any context, and there's got to be a way to do something. That's interesting. I would love that. And once you could really build out, Ken Ham's the one who could do this. You could really be hey, well, here's the we're going to unpack the whole tabernacle, whatever, It's man, there's something there. I like that idea.
Well, maybe it's 3/4 baked, fully baked. I don't know.
Sometimes I look at Michael and I say, what's he thinking? And other times I say, yeah, that's a good idea. The other side of it, he walked in, and to his horror, he was freaking out about his shirts. So you should get on YouTube and look. It's not blending in with the green screen at all. He's got a little blue in there. He's got a very tiny stripe of blue, and he was like, "Podcast is ruined. I can't cast in this. I didn't change."
Yeah. Normally I try to wear a solid maroon color because it's red is the opposite. Your color wheel. Red is the opposite of green.
That's right. Know your wheel. Yeah.
And so we have had colors similar to this that have had problems bleeding in. So I'm hoping that I'm not just a floating head right now.
He's taking shots at me. He's like, we've had colors like this sometimes. Zach wears it, but it was great. He was like, oh no, I'm wearing a tiny bit of blue.
Well, because gray.
I understand.
Yeah. Gray, color theory, gray is a little bit of blue, a little bit of green, a little bit of red. And so when you start taking the green out of gray, it goes away. So, yeah.
Hey, don't say you didn't learn anything on this podcast. That's great. And if you thought the color wheel was exciting, buckle down for some philosophy. Now, this is good. Honestly, you listen to the handful of philosophy podcasts that we have on here, you're going to you'll be well equipped, because I think what you do well, I'm kind of along for the ride. You give the basic, and then you dive into it a little bit more, so you kind of get best of both worlds, where you can get. And then if you're hey, I want to know a little bit more underneath, without going crazy, it's a good. I think it's really really helpful.
Without going ham.
Without going. That's great. That's great. I love it.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to market this idea, just let me know. Royalties or something, should have it patented or something.
Get a patent on that bad boy. That is pretty amazing. Well, let's talk philosophy, the moral arguments. For God's sake. So we've talked about
cosmological. We haven't talked about teleological, have we? We skipped over that one. Okay. But we talked about cosmological, and then we talked about St. Aquinas' essence and existence.
Okay, yeah.
And then out of those, we had a question from a user, not to be confused with Ken Ham, but has a username.
What is his username? This is great.
Something like Ken Hammy or something like that.
Ken Hammy, I love that.
But he's been listening to our podcast. We appreciate you and others who are faithful listeners.
Maybe he knows Ken Ham. If you know Ken Ham,
potentially, maybe it is Ken Ham. Maybe
that would be awesome.
But I guess in some of what I was talking about in the probably more likely the long cosmological argument was, I'm an old earth creationist, so we had done some stuff on, how could you interpret, is there a way to faithfully interpret the Bible to be old Earth, and you may or may not agree with that interpretation, but I think it's at least in the ballpark. There's a way to do that faithfully. And so today we're going to be talking about the moral argument for God's existence.
That's great. Well, let's go ahead and take it to the next level. From the heart of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level.
Wow. The moral argument for God's existence. I love we got these handful of, you can go different directions for different ways to think about, God and his existence. Where do we go? Let's talk morality.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the strongest arguments, actually. It's hard to say. I think they're all really convincing for me.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it's because I'm already, lean that direction. So I think it's probably natural I find them convincing. But I've heard a lot from atheists or former atheists who said this is really the thing that got them. And sometimes Greg Koukl will even introduce this by saying, one of the strongest complaints against God's existence is the existence of evil. Some people say if there's evil in the world,
they're leaning into morality,
right?
Kind of, right? Yeah.
Well, they'll say if evil's in the world, then God can't exist. But the rebuttal is the only way evil can exist, objective evil, is for there to be objective good.
Yeah, I like that. If you're going to say that, you're kind of conceding that morality is a thing,
right?
Because really, to be an atheist, you got to be like, we're stardust. Like nothing really matters on one hand.
Well, you could say on an old Earth creationist, you could say we're still stardust too.
Okay, very true. I mean stardust and the fact that
stardust.
That nothing, whatever happens, we're just chemical. We're just everything's predetermined. Like you got to really commit. Yeah. Or you don't commit. It's hard to be. I think a lot of people think they're halfway atheists, and it's like, wow, your worldview is not computing.
Yeah. And so maybe we just start out with the argument itself.
Okay, good.
And then we'll talk about some of the premises. There are different ways to structure a syllogism.
Okay.
And I'm not going to remember these. I should. Maybe I will. Modus tollens and modus ponens, something like that.
Nice.
Maybe you can. Look that up. Okay. I think it's modus tollens and modus. But anyways, while he's doing that, I'll tell you what. This is the one that's less common. But the first premise is if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. And it's basically saying that in order for objective moral values and duties to exist, then there must be a God. Second premise of the argument is objective moral values and duties do exist, so therefore God must exist. So should you get those two types, modus tollens?
Yeah.
And modus what is the second? It's the ponens.
Yeah.
one.
So there's modus ponens and modus tollens.
Okay,
you're right. Yeah, you're good.
So I nailed them.
It's great.
And this is the one.
Those are valid forms of propositional logic, not syllogisms, unless those are the same things. I don't know. I'm just reading ChatGPT.
A syllogism is just a way of structuring. It's a 3-line propositional logic. Yeah.
Okay, we'll take it up with Chat because
Let's hear what Chat says.
Chat says whatever I typed in. It says these are not part of syllogistic logic, but a deductive inference and propositional logic. Maybe there's like a minute difference between those. Maybe there's not. Neither here nor there. But anyway, I typed in modus ponens, and it was saying P to Q. Anyway, they're going. Yeah.
So what we're saying is, So we'll just say number one is not P, not Q.
Okay.
And then 2 is saying Q.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this says therefore P.
Boom.
Yeah.
It.
So that is the modus tollens. Sweet. So we're saying if God does not exist, that's the not P. Then objective moral values and duties do not exist. That's the not Q. And then number 2 is saying we're saying Q, therefore it has to be P. God exists. So you can look that up on.
It's good. Look it up. Chat will give you a lot of syllogism talk.
Yeah. So it is a sound. Well, it is formally sound in its form.
Yes, yeah, right.
And so what that means is if two premises are true, then the conclusion follows through force of logic. So if you want to deny the conclusion God exists, you have to invalidate either premise 1 or premise 2.
Boom. I love it.
All right. So that's where when you're talking with someone, that's where they're going to go. They're going to say, well, if you want to deny premise 1, you're going to have to say that objective moral duties and values can exist outside of there being a God. Or if you're going to deny premise 2, you're going to say there are no objective moral duties.
Which I think a lot of people today like to say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe not when push comes to shove, but it sounds really nice just like throwing that out there. And that's how they try to get around that syllogism. I mean, whether they're thinking syllogism or not. They're like, well, God doesn't have to exist because what's right, what's wrong, that's what you say.
It sounds nice until they express outrage over something that someone does.
Until you steal their wallets.
That is wrong. You should not do that. By what standard?
Yeah. Love it. I love it.
You love the by what standard?
Oh, by what? Precept 101. That's why I like precept because I can't keep up with all the classical.
Yeah.
It's like the precept, I can keep up with it. Hey, the Bible. By what standard? Yeah, that's what I have to say.
What standard? So this actually does fall into, and we'll talk about this at the end, the transcendental argument form, which is the presuppositional's favorite. That's the only argument that they will use. Support for premise 1, without a transcendent source like God, morals either have to be subjective or they can be societal constructs. So they can be outside the person.
Sure.
But it's like the rules of monopoly.
You all agree to it.
Yeah, we just agree to these rules, but there's nothing that really...
We just want to keep society together, whether it's right or wrong. It just helps us function.
There is no right or wrong.
Because there is no right or wrong. I think this, to me, this makes a lot of sense where, if there is no transcendent right or wrong person, I'm kind of right there with you.
Drive on the right side of the road, drive on the left side of the road. Is there really a difference?
It's
just, but by convention, we're all going to drive on the right side of the road unless you're, in England. Does Australia?
You lost the rule. Lost the war. Just change the road. Come on.
Yeah. But that would be an example of we don't think that there is some objective moral
arbitrary.
Right or wrong. It's just a societal construct, that we're all agreeing to. Or it could be preference based. Like, I just don't think it's right to do fill in the blank.
Yeah.
But that's me. I'm talking about my feelings. I'm not talking about something that is outside.
I like that a lot. When you look at people like Richard Dawkins or Michael Ruse or J.L. Mackie, I think this is interesting that these atheists, these philosophers, they'll concede that without God, morality is not objective.
Right. Here's one of the famous quote from Richard Dawkins. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at the bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. So he's basically conceding that, at least on his view, there is no good or evil. Now, in a separate book, he writes this: the God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud about it, petty, unjust, unforgiving, control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. That's a mouthful there.
Say that 10 times fast. That's like Dr. Seuss gone rogue. like something bad.
Yeah. So he is going to say, without God, there's no good or evil.
But
it looks like this guy is really evil and that you shouldn't do these. Like, why would you have this complaint? Why
doesn't matter.
Why is genocide bad?
Yeah.
If there
what's
is
the big
no
deal?
God?
It just happens. But to his first quote, it's like, to me, these people that are so smart, it's like you really do have to just commit 100% and really believe that, or you can't. But you ask the average person on the street, they'll be like, "Oh, there's no God." Maybe they think that. I think a lot of people would believe in God, whether it's the God of the Bible. But they'll be like, "Everything's working out for good," or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it's it's not just totally random shit. But I like how you put those against each other because even the smartest of humanity can't grapple with this really.
Some people like that guy, I can never remember his name when I tried to remember it. He's a physicist, but he'll argue that we have objective morals without God because we know what makes human flourishing good or human flourishing take off, and it's just like you wouldn't add sugar to your gas tank because that's bad.
Okay,
because it doesn't help your car flourish, right? So we know the things that help humanity flourish, but the question is, why is humanity flourishing a good thing? Why are we not doing things to make the German cockroach flourish? We gas one of them, and we get mad when someone else gasses the other one. There's a big difference there. So oftentimes when people try to argue around the moral argument, they smuggle this concept of goodness back in, and it's really, if you're talking with someone, you just got to be like detective, ask some questions, and then figure out where they're trying to smuggle morality back in, but not identify it.
Cut that morality. Because a belief in God, that gives you that grounding for moral values, what we've been talking about, what is good, what is bad. That's grounded in this transcendent being, an unchanging nature of God. And then on top of that, you got these moral duties, what we're supposed to do. We need to respond in a certain way, grounded in God's commands. That just kind of stems and flows from his nature.
So in our free flow talking, we kind of talked about some of these objections, but we'll just read them. Objection 1, morality can be grounded in evolution or societal consensus. Evolution explains behavior. And so if morality is grounded in evolution, and someone can say, I'm a rapist because of my DNA, I'm a murderer because of my DNA, whatever because of my DNA, then who are we to put them in a prison? Like, they're just living out what their genes told them to.
Yeah, behaving in the same way as scientists observing animals. And it's like, that's okay. We would say that's not okay for us, right?
Yeah. And objective morals are non-physical things. So it's hard to understand how that could be encoded in a physical strand of DNA.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Objection 2, morality can exist without God. Objective values, they just exist. Moral Platonism. And the answer to that, I was getting a text. Abstract moral facts lack causal power. Why would be obligated to something that's like these impersonal principles? Theism offers a personal lawgiver behind the laws. Like, what would be the point? Yeah, these are just impersonal things. Doesn't matter.
We all drive down the highway. We see a speed limit sign.
Yeah.
That sign itself has no... We're not obligated to the sign. It has no causal power against us. It's not even possible to disobey a sign, right? That sign is standing in place of people who have said, okay, by our authority, we're going to make it this speed limit. So there has to be a lawgiver in order for that sign to have causal power. So the same way like these Platonic abstract ideals, let's say there's an abstract ideal of goodness or something.
Okay, yeah.
That would be just like a sign on the highway. There's got to be something behind it, in order for there to actually have a duty to obey it.
Okay, that's good.
Because I could put a sign up.
I could do it too. Yeah, let's do it.
And you wouldn't have a duty to obey it because I don't have the standing in order to. I'm not a lawgiver, so you need a lawgiver in order to have that duty. All right, you want to pronounce this name?
I was hoping you would.
All right, so objection 3. Sometimes this name, and you may have, I hear people pronounce it different. Euthyphro.
Okay.
Or Euthyphro.
I've heard it both ways.
Yeah, both ways.
Yeah.
But he was this guy in this, I believe it was Socrates, in this dialogue by Socrates, where he, maybe Plato, either Socrates or Plato.
Okay.
But he's this guy who's having this dialogue. Well, let me just clarify. Plato wrote all of them. Socrates didn't write anything. But sometimes we attribute some of it to Socrates. Sometimes we attribute some of it to Plato. But he's this guy, and he says, why do the gods command what they do? Do they command it because it's good, or is it good because they command it? Right.
Yeah.
What makes it is, which one is it? And you could see on like a Greek mythology where you have these gods who are not good.
Oh, yeah.
But they're commanding things like what makes that good. They don't even necessarily agree. Do they command it because it's good?
Yeah. Or does it?
Or is it just arbitrary?
Yeah.
And you can see how neither one of those is settling to us. Like we wouldn't want to say God the Father, he commands it because it's good. Because then they'd be like, well, there's something outside of God
him,
that makes it good. That doesn't seem right. Or is it just arbitrary, capricious? Because he commanded it, it's good.
It becomes good. He could have said anything.
Yeah.
And it would, and it's like it's forcing you to pick and choose between these two alternatives.
Right. So that's one objection to this idea. And what we do is we split the horns of the dilemma. We say this is a false dilemma. There's another option. There's a third option. And that option is that the good is God's own nature. He is the good. He commands according to his nature. He is the ground of good.
Oh, that's good. So there's no external outside of God, and it just kind of flows from him.
Right, and it's not capricious either. It's built on his very essence, his being. Yeah,
that's great. So that is premise number one. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties don't exist. Let's move on to premise number two. Objective moral values and duties do exist.
Yeah, so what we're saying is premise one is just giving this relationship. Like in order for them to exist, God has to exist. Now we're going to actually posit, and they do exist. And like we said before, anytime, most people agree with this. Most people agree that it is objectively wrong to be racist. It is objectively wrong to, carry out genocide. It's objectively wrong to discriminate against people for no reason, right? And so then you would, so we have objective morals and duties. We have an obligation to love each other, to treat each other well, to not steal from each other, to not harm each other. Those are fairly straightforward concepts.
Yeah, I think that's good. And here you say, like you just mentioned, cultures recognize things are bad. You look at people like Martin Luther King Jr., Bonhoeffer. People are like, oh, these people are great because they're standing up for what's right. There's all this moral outrage at genocide, racism, maybe pushing back against it. What about, hey, I know this tribe and they practice cannibalism. Like, doesn't mean it's like foolproof.
Yeah.
Or you could say, hey, the Holocaust did happen. People thought it was pretty good in the moment, I guess, know.
Yeah. So we will talk about some of that. The idea that there might be widespread disagreement disproves objectivity. So those are all some things that happen. So some people will say, well, actually, it's not. Morality is subjective. It's what we make of it. And sometimes college professors will say, is it wrong to lie? People go, it's wrong to lie. Well, then was it wrong to lie about the people who are hiding Jews from Hitler?
Yeah, right.
And what happens is this is just like a magic trick. And you just mind trick people into believing something. But the fact is that is only a problem if it's actually objectively wrong, right?
Yeah, because you're appealing to that, you're saying, okay, there is a right and wrong.
Yeah, so what happens is sometimes you're putting dilemmas where you have to choose a greater good. What's greater, saving a life or not giving information? Saving a life is clearly greater.
Would you steal to feed your family?
Yeah. So the reason that we feel the impact of those types of dilemmas is because there are objective moral duties and obligations that we're trying to weigh against each other. Like which one is more, and you always do the greater good in those situations.
No, that's good. So that's objection number one. Objection number two, well, evolution gives us these moral instincts. Evolution explains how we come to believe in morality, but not whether those things are true. That's how we got here.
Right. Like even if it could do that, like we said before that it can't, but even if it could, it wouldn't explain the fact that maybe we learn from our genetics. Okay. That doesn't make it actually true. So it would only explain how we come to learn it, but it wouldn't give us justification for its ontology. So that in philosophy, we would say that's the difference between knowing and being, or epistemology and ontology.
That's good because, I think you're right that people will or you might hear that it's like, oh, still it's kind of arbitrary. We just evolved this way. Objection number 3: widespread moral disagreement disproves objectivity.
Yeah. So lots of people disagree on science. And that didn't make, there is still an objective truth there. So just because some people might disagree about what's good or bad doesn't mean that there isn't ultimately a good or bad. It just means maybe some things are less easy to know.
Yeah. And might even, I think we've said this for some of the other ones, it might even kind of like prove the point, because why is there so much disagreement? Like you're trying to tease out some of this. Right. Like it's such a big deal. If it was truly arbitrary, maybe it wouldn't be such a big point.
And then, but to even cut against that objection even more, when you survey people, there actually is not a widespread disagreement.
It's not as what, we're like over minutia, kind of. When you look at that, that's true. Yeah.
So almost all societies prohibit unjustified murder. Almost all societies have some condemnation of stealing and dishonesty. There may be some like, you can think of some tribes where it's part of their honor to go and steal something, but that's part of that is built into their value system. We value courage and bravery and justice, protecting your family, honoring elders. One example, there was this group of people who, once their parents started getting older, they would kill them.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, "What is going on? Like, this is like, these people are not immoral people." Well, the thing behind that was that they thought that you entered the afterlife with your capabilities you had now.
So before they become
invalid and stuff, we want to honor you by killing you so you can enjoy the afterlife with all your attributes. So you're not like
Yeah. So even if something's like wrong, maybe even underneath that, most things. Yeah, I think that's good. And most people, there are people who are crazy, but most societies recognize the crazies. Like, oh, this is like other or out there. This is not norm.
Yep. Okay, so that is the moral argument. Premise 1, if God doesn't exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. But we're going to say objective moral values and duties do exist. And if those premises are true, which I think they are, then it shows that God exists. And I mentioned this earlier. This is a form of a transcendental argument. And basically it's saying there is something that exists that transcends just this natural physical world. And it needs an explanation outside of just these molecules in motion.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Because I like this because I think it's simple. And like you're saying, it kind of resonates on a level where it's not just like thinking about where did the world come from, etc., but it's like that you just experience this every day.
Yeah,
you can see things that are right and see things that are wrong, or things that rub you the wrong way, or things that are beautiful and really good. I think most people just feel that or experience that. Yeah.
So here are some other arguments. So we could do the same exact argument and replace moral obligations, moral values and obligations, or sometimes we'll word it as duties. You could replace that with reason and knowledge, because if God doesn't exist, there's no reason that we should trust our cognitive faculties to yield anything like truth.
If it's just evolution or whatever, it could be we're just trying to survive, not saying that's right or wrong. Yeah, exactly.
So Alvin Plantinga, very famous philosopher. If you're in philosophy, especially philosophy of religion, you know who he is. Actually developed a full-orbed. It's in the low notes, but we won't go over it. Okay. A full-orbed argument against evolution on naturalism, because he's saying that there's no way we could know evolution is true, or we should trust that we know evolution is true if naturalism is the case, because evolution does not. On the theory, it does not select for truth, knowing truth.
Yeah.
It selects for being able to get your genes into the next generation.
Yeah,
and that's
good. Oh, yeah, you're right. Every time, it doesn't matter what truth says, right or wrong.
Right.
We're just going to keep propagating or whatever.
So the most that we could know is what we believe right now helps serve getting our genes to the next generation.
Yeah, there you go.
And it would be deterministic. because we wouldn't have
right.
we wouldn't have knowledge.
You're
anyways.
just trying to. That's
Right.
good.
Yeah.
You can also apply this as an argument from consciousness, that consciousness cannot arise from a purely physical process. Our conscious experiences, intentionality, and subjective awareness point to a personal, immaterial source, and that's God. And materialism, they struggle to account for first-person experience. I feel like this whole concept of consciousness is like just this is like the question people are like grappling with, like, oh, what is truly conscious, what is not.
Yeah, and I go back to Greg Koukl because I listen to him a lot. Surprisingly, go back to him.
Yeah, I haven't heard his name.
But he's talked with people and basically has had questions where someone was like, have you ever come into contact with something non-physical? And he's like, you do it all the time. Every time you're awake and you're thinking to yourself, yourself is non-physical, and like, there's no law of nature that accounts for me raising my hand, or for this mass to be lifted above and suspended above the mass of the earth. What has happened is an agent, me, Michael, has decided I'm going to pick it up and hold it up. And there is a non-physical self that's deciding to do that, who's interacting with the physical world in a way. Like this defies.
Yeah. And this is like an everyday phenomenon. Yeah.
And
no
we're
matter
so
what you're
used
doing,
to it, we don't marvel it over. People get all hung up over the resurrection because it breaks the laws of nature. This breaks the laws of nature. This should not be here.
Yeah.
But it is because obviously there is a biochemical thing about my muscles tightening and the fibers, and so we can't explain it like this. But why is this cup hovering like this? Why did my hand grab it like this? There's no law of nature that can explain that.
Yeah, it's great. And if things were purely physical, then you would just expect, like we were talking about kind of before, everything's just keep the genes going. Like we're not like, oh, let's do this or this. It's kind of like, hey, we're just doing the next right thing.
Yep. All right. Daniel Dennett, I think he's passed away.
Okay.
But he was the philosopher that spent his career trying to say that consciousness was an illusion, that it didn't really exist, that we were being fooled. Who's being fooled?
Right.
If consciousness is an illusion, who is the one who's being fooled into thinking it's really there? It's a good question. All right. Argument from beauty. This one is a little bit more abstract, but if there is such a thing as beauty, objective beauty, if we can go, this thing is beautiful.
Yeah.
It is aesthetically pleasing. Yeah. You ever seen like a crazy sunrise or sunset? We get a lot of good sunsets here in the low country. Yeah. Maybe the Northern Lights.
There you go. Yeah. I think those overwhelming. Like when I was reading this at first, I was like, man, like Richard Hartnett pulls out one of these poems in Sunday school, I might be like, it's fine. He'll be like, it's beautiful. Or, like you see some of those things. But I think like things like sunsets are more 100% all in.
Right.
Things like the Mona Lisa might be more, people are in different camps.
There are tastes, and some people might find some things more beautiful than others, but it's scientifically proven. Like you can have people, objectify the human face. Like this is a beautiful, like rate this face on 1 to 10 on how beautiful, handsome you think it is. And guess what? There are certain geometric principles of symmetry and proportion that we find beautiful, and that aligns to mathematical laws that you're going to find that face more attractive.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Where there's probably overall norms, and then there's just like if anything else, outliers. Where I'm sure there's someone who's like, I hate sunsets or something. You know what I mean? Like I don't know that person, but I'm sure there's someone out there who's like that.
Yeah. Number 4, argument from logic.
Yeah.
There's a famous debate between, I think it's Bonson.
Oh, now you're talking pre-suppers language. I want to talk more about Bonson.
Well, the thing is, pre-suppers, they use this argument, and how they use it in a classical apologetic way. Because when they're just talking, they talk about epistemology, like, that God exists. But when you look at Bonson's actual debates, he reverts to arguing like a classical apologist would.
Man,
But
yeah. This is great.
But there is this, I think his name is Steiner. I should have looked this up.
Yeah.
Is it Steiner? He's debating this guy named Steiner, Bonson and Steiner. Zach will fact check me while I'm telling the story. But man, I wish we had debates like this, even like between a Calvinist and an Arminian, because they would have their normal, what you would expect in a debate. Like, I talk a little bit, you talk a little bit, I rebut what you said, you rebut what I said. But then they go into a question answer, and you have to ask yes or no questions. So I would ask you a series of yes or no questions. You would say yes, no, yes, no. And he basically gets Steiner to say, is it Steiner?
So there is one, I'm trying to think what this, it might be, ChatGPT is saying there isn't a wide debate between Greg Bonson and Rudolf Steiner, but maybe there is or a Robert Steiner. There is one he has with Gordon Stein.
Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe Gordon Stein. I think that is it now, Gordon Stein. What we'll do for sure is I'll find it and I'll put it in the notes of.
Yeah, it's saying he argued that laws of logic, morality, and science presuppose. Yeah, so this is
yeah, that's it. And so during this back and forth question, it's a beautiful thing where
just
basically
the cadence, the timing of it, it's like crazy.
Stein basically he gets him to admit that the laws of logic are outside, they're not physical, and therefore they would presuppose something non-physical as their origin. So it's great.
This is great. Thinking of, I'm going to listen a little bit more to. I'd like to understand Bonson better because he's like the father of a lot of this like theonomy, like reconstructionist too. Like they all, they're like, it's just, there's like these 5 or 6 guys that are side, and I just don't, when I read about Bonson, I'm like, man, I like a lot of what he's saying, but then it's like, some of it just doesn't compute, or some of the conclude, I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But he's the guy I need to, his son does a lot of, he like takes a lot of, he's like in the business world or something, and this is totally random, but he does a lot of like Bonson's like precept stuff, and he tries to apply it kind of like theonomy, like to your, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. But anyway, I need to go check out some more Bonson and Van Til and that kind of thing, because I just don't get everything. A lot of their stuff sounds good, but I don't get everything.
Yeah, and there is another debate that you can find between Bonson and Sproul where they're specifically debating, and there's not video, but there's audio, and the audio is not best. But if you're patient and listen to it, you can hear that debate as well. We'll link both of those in there.
Oh, that's good.
For funsies. All right, so I think that's a good recap of the moral argument. Moral argument is in the family of transcendental arguments. And really anything we named consciousness, we named beauty, the laws of logic, reason, moral obligations. If those things exist, they have to have a grounding for their existence since they are non-physical.
Yeah.
Outside of the physical world. And so if you believe those exist, then you have to, if you're going to be consistent logically.
You got to pick your corner, and people don't like the corner. People don't want to like face the music of the atheists, but they don't want to come over to Christianity. Sometimes it's like, well, logically, you can't just stick in the middle.
Yeah, there's a book written by, I can't think of anyone's name tonight, but it's talking about stealing from God, and it's this actual idea, like, these people who want to live in an atheist world, but borrow stuff from the theistic world.
That's right.
Yeah, steal it.
Man,
yeah.
I love it. Add it to the philosophy collection. We're building a nice little. Yeah. I like it too, and it's like it's robust. It's like not just these arguments. We've also talked about other things in philosophy. Maybe not. I can't remember, but I feel like we've got a good thing. So. Anyway, what's our next philosophy podcast? You got anything?
We should probably go back and pick up the teleological argument.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good.
And then I want to touch on the ontological argument. It's probably the most misunderstood.
It's great.
But you get a lot of atheists saying like, "Well, I want a maximally great pizza, therefore, boom, it exists." That's not how there's a key feature there that they're missing.
Always confuse me. I love it. Existence. Fun stuff. Well, thanks for hanging in there. That is our take. Thanks for listening to Take 2. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our video cast.